Welcome to Beyond Words Presents. I'm Whitney Diffenderfer, your host, here with David Seidman. He's the author of our upcoming book, it's not even out yet, called What If I'm an Atheist? It's right here. It's specifically for teens who are unbelievers or who are looking into what it means to be an unbeliever. David, welcome to the program.
Oh, thanks, Whitney.
It's so great to have you here because the story behind how you came to write this book is really quite a phenomenal one, and I'm so excited to get to share it with people and also share with people all of the things that you learned, because some of the things that you discovered are really quite shocking. And I just want to let everybody out there know that if you have any questions and you want to participate in the conversation, you can use the Google Hangouts app. You can use the hashtag BWPresents. And be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, and also follow us on Twitter. So, David, how did you come to write a book about atheism? Because I know you yourself are not an atheist.
Not exactly, no. Well, I'm a writer, and I was looking for my next assignment. Ordinarily, what I would do is look to see about any publishers who were, say, starting up a new line of books, a new series of books. And so I was checking the bestseller list to see who was doing well with books. And I noticed that when it comes to teenage, young adult nonfiction, there were a lot of books about religion and about spirituality. And I thought, well, gee, what about the atheist kids? And there was nothing. And I mean I don't mean nothing on the bestseller list. I mean no nonfiction on the subject for atheist and agnostic teenagers. And I thought, well, that they should be served. They should. And so I did something that I almost never do. And that is start on a book without an assignment waiting for me. Usually I work out a deal with the publisher before I start anything, but this time I was out on my own and researched the subject, and I kept finding things that there was more discrimination against atheists, particularly young atheists, than I imagined. Schools that would refuse to let teenagers start an atheist club, even something as innocent as that, or schools that would insist on prayer, even though that is literally against the law. And also I was finding there are millions more atheists and agnostics and just people without religion than I thought. I mean, as much as 15% of the American population. And I thought, why aren't there books for these folks? And you know, writing a book proposal, which is what you have to do to convince a publisher to publish your book, that's a long process. Writing the book is even longer. And doing it without knowing that there was a publisher waiting for it, again, very much not something I did. So this took years. I started on this process in 2006, but something about this subject, I wouldn't let go of me, or I wouldn't let go of it. And part of it might have been that I grew up Jewish, and every November and December, if you look in storefronts, on TV, everywhere you look, people are saying, buy Christmas presents, get a Christmas tree. And I know what it's like to be the minority in a matter of belief. And I sure know what it's like to be a teenager feeling that way. And that just kept me going until now. You know, 7 years, 9 years later.
9 years later.
And we got a book out.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we're so excited to be on this journey with you, because some of the things that you just talk about in the very beginning of your book, and then also some of the things that are happening in the news right now. I mean, there are people who are getting attacked and killed for their beliefs and for sharing their beliefs. And what I hear in what you're saying is just like you saw that all over the place, because of course there's those big things that happen all over the place that the news is all about and stuff, but it's really the little stuff that we don't ever hear about that's really who this book is for.
Well, that's exactly right. When I would interview teenagers and people in college areas, I would hear stories about, well, a typical example, there's a woman, she's a woman now, she was a young woman when this happened about 4 or 5 years ago, Jessica Alquist out in Rhode Island. In her school auditorium, there was a banner that was basically a prayer. And she said, this is a public school, they shouldn't have that. And she went to the school board, went to the principal, and over a very long time, it took months, got it taken down. But while she was doing this, oh my goodness, other students would call her nasty names. A state representative went on a radio talk show and literally called her an evil little thing. She was 14. And by the way, she started a blog called Evil Little Thing, which I thought showed a great sense of humor on her part, where she chronicled what was going on. And she finally did get the banner taken down, and the thing became such a controversy that organizations like the Hugh M. Hefner Foundation for Freedom of Expression, the Touro Synagogue Foundation for Religious Freedom, and just atheist groups all over the place contributed more than $40,000 for a college scholarship fund for Jessica. And she even said that, oh yeah, and she even said that this campaign, when she described herself as very shy when she started this, but by the end of it, she said, you know, I didn't enjoy the process, but boy, it made me strong. It made me able to speak up for myself. Now, that's an example of something in the news that did become news, but there are millions of stories, I think, of people who are just teenagers who are scared to tell their parents. There was one guy who said, well, if I were to tell my dad, I think on his best day, he'd kick me out. On an ordinary day, he'd hunt me for sport. And I thought, this kid, I can't imagine what it's like to go through that.
Yeah.
And there were so many stories of parents who would get furious, or who would cry, or who would force their kids to go to church on the theory, I guess, that we didn't push enough religion at our son or daughter. And when I was interviewing these people and when I was reading these stories, I just said, oh gosh, these poor kids.
Well, and the thing that fascinates me is that people view atheism as something that's evil.
Hold on, we have a connection problem.
Oh, can you understand me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm shocked that people.
Okay, now I can.
I'm shocked that people view atheism as something that's evil, because it's not. You know, it's not really anything. It's just saying that you don't believe, and that's it. And I know that there are a lot of people that then believe that you don't have morals, that religion equals morals, and you write about that in your book, and I would love to hear about, like, how do people get that tangled up?
Well, people believe that morality comes from religion, and if you don't have religion, well, you don't have morality. And that's not really the case, because there are millions of atheists around the world who live perfectly kind and moral lives. One of the things that I found is that in states and countries that have a high proportion of atheists and agnostics and just people with no religion, they have no higher a rate of crime or violence or hate groups than in states that have a lot of religion. Vermont, Washington State, places like that have, in fact, in some cases, lower incidence of crime, of belonging to groups like the Ku Klux Klan, than other places that are drenched in religion. And it's true worldwide. Sweden, Japan. In Sweden, about half or more of the people there have no religion, no belief, and it's, you know, have no religion, no belief in God. And also, some writers and other people dealing with atheism have said, well, atheism, since it's basically saying here's what we don't believe, it doesn't lay out any particular beliefs, but atheists, having lived in a society that says, here are the rules of behavior that we want, a lot of them have the feeling of repressing your telling other people how to live and enforcing a morality, literally sometimes with physical force. Okay, that's wrong. There are atheists who have put out their own versions of the Ten Commandments. The atheists who have said, well, look, honestly, all we need is the golden rule, and that's good enough for anybody. So that's what that's all about.
Well, and I'm super curious because as you did all this research and you spoke to all sorts of kids and teens and things like that, you discovered
Yeah.
lots of really, really painful stories that they're experiencing. And there are some kids who, like, they're so scared that they hide their atheism from
For
everybody. And
years. Mhm.
it's in a world that is so moral and so based in religion. How do they even function in that way? Because their belief system would be going against so much that is just it's just accepted as how society is.
It's very, very hard. A lot of them, um, they do keep their mouths shut about this sort of thing. They change the subject a lot. When people are talking about religion, they just try to avoid it, but they always do feel the pressure. It is a constant and very conscious thing, and a lot of them uh, uh, said to me in confidence or wrote to me. Most of my interviews were via email. That it is a constant effort, and sometimes they feel that they're just going to burst and say, "All right, everybody, you listen. I'm an atheist. What do you say about that?" I mean, that's not word for word, but they had that urge,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes that desire is what gets people to come forth and tell their parents or other people how they feel, even though they expect that there's going to be a very negative reaction. Because after a while, it's like, I feel like a hypocrite. I feel like a liar. I'm not telling the truth to the people I love. And it takes a lot of guts for them
Mm-hmm.
to fix the situation, but they do.
It's just making me think of the LGBTQ community and
Yes.
the effort and the challenge that it is to come out in that fashion as well. And there's a lot of information, there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of support for that. And in the community of atheism, just in doing research myself around atheism, there are some things, there's some great groups out there, but it's so much, it's it's so taboo. It's just people don't outwardly form groups and outwardly have gatherings and support for each other because it's I don't know. I just think about it. Every Sunday, any religious organization, or Sunday or Friday, or whichever day you practice, you have a weekly opportunity to gather. And if you're an atheist, well, it is not really a belief system; it's an unbelief system. But you don't have that support. And if you did have that support, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine the response you would get.
Well, yeah, and there are some atheist, quote unquote, churches.
Mm.
Um, there are groups that call themselves ethical culture groups. There are places like the North Dallas Church of Free Thought, and they're scattered around the country and around the world. There's one called the Sunday Assembly in London. And so they are around, but there aren't that many of them.
Hmm.
Uh, there are there's a group called the Secular Student Alliance for high school and college atheists that coordinates campus atheist and agnostic clubs, and that's very helpful as far as building community. Goodness knows there are endless number of websites and forums and message boards where people do go. There are even therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists who specialize in treating atheists and agnostics because
Mm.
they're atheist and agnostic themselves, a lot of them, and they have a certain amount of sympathy and understanding, I guess, for the problems of the unbelievers. But yeah, finding a community, it's out there, but you do have to find it as opposed to you can walk down, any number of streets in any city and find churches. There,
Hmm.
it's just they're available. It's just harder,
Yeah.
as with almost anything with dealing with unbelief. It's out there, but it's harder.
And it's fascinating. I just did the math in my head as you were talking, and you were saying that 15% of people in the United States are unbelievers. And I believe I read in the beginning of your book that under the age of 30, that number is even higher.
Yes, absolutely. As many as 1 in 5 people under 30, or let's say, because I don't want to count children in this, let's say ages 13 through 30, about 1 in 5 either has no religion or is a straight out atheist or agnostic.
Well, and for me, I'm
In
just
fact,
remembering. Sorry, what was that?
Bill Maher, the host of the HBO show Real Time, said, that if atheists and agnostics ever form voting bloc, we would have a huge movement for rights for atheists and agnostics, just as when gay and lesbian people got together and said, we want rights for ourselves, we better get involved in politics.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it is kind of interesting that that hasn't happened yet, but it's also, you know, the lack of specific organizations, I guess. I don't know. I'm not going to speak to that, but at the same time, I'm just thinking about what that would look like in my own personal life, and I think a lot of people around us, and even some parents out there whose kids are in that place of, you know, when you're a certain age, you just accept whatever it is that your life has been. Like, you accept whatever religious beliefs that your parents have had, and that's just kind of the way it is because you're young, and that's just the way it is. Yeah. And so for either kids or adults out there, kids out there who are exploring being an atheist, and then also parents who have kids who are exploring being an atheist, what does it mean to become an atheist? Do you do anything, or is it just a declaration?
Oh, yeah, you have to send away for a whole kit. It's terrible. No. Everybody goes through a different process. Some people are simply raised atheist, and so they're there from the beginning. Some people have a sense from the very, even if they are raised with religion, they have a sense of, nah, this doesn't make sense. This isn't for me. With other people, if they accept religion, which I think is the majority, or at least a large minority, it's a very hard process. And often it involves, first it involves sort of a searching, of questioning, wait a minute, there's something here in the Bible or what the minister or priest or rabbi or whoever said, that doesn't make sense. And they start asking questions. And often what will happen that pushes people toward atheism is religious leaders or parents will say, don't even ask that. Don't think about that. No, it's just, there's no reason. It's just God's will. And some kids, some teenagers are just not going to accept that. And that will turn them off of religion. One of the best things that any religious leader can do is say, well, that's an interesting question. Let's talk about it, as opposed to just pushing people's minds away. Now, there's an emotional journey. First, as I say, there is this searching, this seeking. And so a lot of teenage people who are just curious will be reading things. They might read books like Richard Dawkins' God Delusion. Some of them search into all sorts of different religious traditions, saying, all right, my religion doesn't work. What else is out there? And eventually they get to the point of, or some of them dig into science. But however they reach it, some of them get to the point of, oh my God, what I was raised with, I can't believe in this anymore. It just doesn't make sense. And then, there are the stages of grief when somebody dies. So there is anger and denial and bargaining and depression and acceptance. And it's kind of similar in losing a religion. There is sadness because you are cutting yourself off from something that you learned at your mother's knee. There may be a community at church of people that you genuinely like, and you realize, oh my God, I'm walking away from this. I can't be with them anymore as far as agreeing with them. Some people so there's sadness, some people get furious. My God, I've been lied to all this time. And eventually there's a sense of liberation, of, oh my God, I'm free. I don't have to feel guilty. I don't have to think about what I'm doing acceptable. I don't have to get up early on Sunday morning, which certainly happens. And it's often liberation. In fact, when I was showing the proposal for this around, the cover that I had created for the proposal was a pair of teenagers who were looking kind of confused and searching. And an atheist couple I showed this to said, oh, no, you should have these kids leaping into the air in joy because they're free. And I thought, well okay. But yeah, that's a lot of the process. And it takes a long time. It can take, months or years.
Well, and it's interesting because we are the kind of publisher that we are. I mean, we publish a lot of books that encourage belief in a higher being, the universe, God, whatever it is. And
sure.
when we looked at our list and we were saying to ourselves, okay, what is it? What do we have for somebody who doesn't believe? When we got your book proposal, it was, and we just were like, we are out there sending out all sorts of messages about the universe and God, and we really do welcome all of these different perspectives. And then it's like, okay, but wait, there's another perspective that we haven't really accommodated for yet. And I think that it's almost like exactly what society does. It's like, this is the span, this portion over here is what we're going to look at, and these people who don't even in any way conform to this portion, we either don't know, we don't even think about them, or we purposefully ignore them. And so by publishing your book, we're trying to be a little bit more accountable for what it is that we say we do.
Well, hot diggity. I'm proud to be a part of that. That's wonderful. But you mentioned spirituality. And there are people who are, atheists and agnostics, who will think about the grandeur of the universe. You don't need God to look up into the night sky, or to, for that matter, look into the face of a newborn baby and feel great awe and mysticism and spirituality. And some of the teenagers I interviewed and who wrote things that I picked up from the internet talked about that. They find great spirituality in contemplating nature without, having to contemplate God at all.
So I guess I'm curious, if somebody, in your research and in all of the things that you've learned, I guess to me, I still, in my perspective, I'm kind of like, okay, if you believe in the universe or a greater power of some form, that's not necessarily atheism. But, okay, so just a question, what does atheism mean?
Literally, it means without God, and that's it. Okay. And there are different kinds that sometimes people, I think, get mixed up about. There's what's called hard or positive or strong atheism, which means I know for sure there's no God, I have proof there's no God. Then there is what's called soft or weak or negative atheism, which is I can't prove that there's a God. I can't see anything that suggests that there's a God. And so, and very often people will mistake all atheists for hard atheists. They will think that atheists are harsh and intolerant at saying, if you believe in God, you're stupid. No, a lot of atheists just say, look, you got your beliefs, I just don't happen to agree. I just don't see the evidence for it. Sorry. And I'm sorry, I think I got off track there. I'm sorry. What were you asking again?
No, I just that actually helps a lot, because I do think that lots of people lump all atheists. I mean, my curiosity is purely because there are a lot of people that we work with, authors that we work with, people out there who are followers of ours and huge supporters of some of the work we do, that they believe in the universe. They believe in the spirituality that comes from the universe and that greater power. And I guess to me that is a form of belief system. To me, that's not necessarily atheism, but they also don't call the universe God. So
right, exactly right. And look, there are millions of atheists out there, and everybody has their own feelings. There's a difference between feelings and belief. I mean, I may have a feeling that that there is something out there in the universe. But if you were to say, yeah, based on what? I'd say, well, I can't really believe that. I don't have any evidence. And you can have a feeling looking up at the night sky that, sorry, wrong phrase. This is an amazing place, this universe, and maybe we are all connected together somehow, without saying, well, there's a deity out there sitting on a wonderful throne, knitting us all together. You can say, I can feel a connection with other people without saying, well, God is the one creating that connection. That happens a lot, actually.
Absolutely. And there's there's a strong spirituality. I felt it on this show when I've been talking to authors on this show, where we talk about the connection between person to person, and whatever connection, whoever, if anything, whatever, has connected us.
Yeah,
That connection is a spiritual feeling.
absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I just noticed the time and that we've been chatting, and I have not mentioned the fact that we do have a special going on as usual. You can get David's book, What If I'm an Atheist? It's brand new, not even out yet, actually. It's not out until next Tuesday, so you can actually order it now, and you can get it for 50% off the cover price, and it's $12.99. So you can get this book, which is a great resource. It has so much information in it for $6.50. And as David said, 1 in 6 people are atheists, especially people under the age of 30, and they might just not have told you yet. And one of the great things that this book has in here is, how do you tell people in your life that you are an atheist? And it is interesting, it is intriguing, it's got statistics, it's got personal accounts, it has a whole bunch of interesting information and useful information in it. So for yourself, for somebody in your life who might be dealing with this, go to www.beyondword.com/atheist, ATHEIST, and grab a copy of this book. It's an incredible deal, and I guarantee you it will be a great resource for you or whoever else in your life you think might need it. So David, that was the other thing that I wanted to ask you about, is that you have guides in here for how somebody can tell somebody in their life that they are an unbeliever. Would you give just a couple of pointers on how to even start that conversation?
Yeah, if you're talking to your parents, one way to do it is to just choose the time and place very carefully. If you know, for example, let's say your mom is stressed during the work week, then talk to her on the weekend. If your dad is rushing around crazy in the morning, but he's mellow after a big dinner, talk to him then. You might want to get out of the house. Go for a walk. Go someplace, if you think they're going to make a big scene and you don't want that, go someplace public, a restaurant or something. Also, you might want to talk to your parents one at a time, because the two of them together can really make each other very upset, perhaps. Or you might want to test out what you're going to say. It's often, a lot of young unbelievers, not all, but quite a few, have somebody else in the family they can talk to, and a cousin, a brother, a sister, and go to that person first. And once you've gotten that person more or less on your side, if you can, say, all right, look, I want to talk to mom and dad about this. You know them too. What do you think if I were to do it this way or that, or that way? Another thing, and it's just a small tip, but it seems to matter quite a bit. You might not want to use the word atheist. That seems to set some people off. That's a trigger word. You might want to say, well, I don't think I believe in God, or there are things I'm not quite sure of our religion, or something like that. It helps, if possible, to ease your parents into the whole understanding of what you believe.
It makes me think of what you're saying about the hard atheists and the soft atheists, and the fact that as soon as you say atheist, so many of us in our society automatically go to that understanding of a hard atheist, and it could be rather scary for a parent to hear, oh, all of a sudden my kid is going to be this angry, yelling at all religions and protesting everything like that type person, and here's my nice little kid here.
Well, it's very hard on some of these parents, because they have worked so hard to raise their kid in what they feel is a good, right, moral way of life, and the kid is saying, nope, sorry, don't buy it. Well, and so what I encourage the kids to do is to say, look, you wouldn't want your parents to insult your disbelief, your atheism, or agnosticism, whatever. Don't insult theirs. And sometimes it's not a bad thing to say, look, Mom, Dad, tell you what, I'm not going to make a big deal of this. When it's just a family discussions, I'm not going to, stand on the dinner table and say, hey, I don't believe what you guys believe. No, I'll be cool about this. I'm not going to tell Grandma that her religion is a crock. Don't worry. I don't believe, but that doesn't mean I'm going to become a jerk all of a sudden.
And what guidance would you give parents? not saying that, their kids are going to come up to them tonight and tell them that they don't believe in God, but just in order to be prepared for something like that, even if it's not about atheism, there's many things that can be surprising to a parent, that they've raised their kid for so many years and then they find out that they don't believe what they believe.
I'm hesitant to advise parents. I've been a teenager, but I am not a parent. Able to transition well, listening to their kids talk about it and having heard from one or two parents, is just the sense of you're riding a wave here. Hold on. You still love your kid, and just listen. Listen. Ask questions. If you yell, it's just going to make things worse. You may want to. I don't. But the best transitions I've seen is where the kids did the transition very gradually. Started out by saying, what I heard in church today, I don't understand. I was reading this thing in the Bible, and it doesn't quite make sense to me. And the parents, and there's a conversation, a back and forth with the parents, and it's just keeping of asking your kid maybe. And again, the parent and teenager relationship is a powder keg. I know this, but just staying open so that when your kid says something to you, take a deep breath and hold on. To parents out there, I was thinking about this while I was writing the book. It's like, oh boy, this may be very hard for you to hear. One of the reasons I went into this sort of thing in detail is to make it so that your kids don't make it hard on you, so that they tell it to you in a way that you can deal with most easily. I'm on the religious parent side almost as much as I'm on the teenager side, because it is difficult. It's just, as anything else your kid might come home with, whether it's a bad grade or a boyfriend or girlfriend you don't like, let them know how you feel, but don't put the hammer down too hard, because I don't think it's going to do a lot of good.
Well, yeah, it's good parenting advice with any subject, with anything that you get confronted by with your kids. And one thing that
go ahead.
Well, one thing that you do write about in here, which I thought was fascinating, very bold, are the kids who have decided that they're atheists. They've been living an atheist lifestyle, and then they decide that they actually do believe. And you have advice for kids who want to become religious again.
Yeah, absolutely, because that does happen. Atheists do turn to religion, and so I had a chapter on that. In a lot of ways, it's kind of the mirror image, which is just as if you're going to announce your atheism to people, don't be a jerk about it. If you've suddenly found God, don't go around saying, hey, all my old atheist friends, you're going to hell. No, come on. Be nice to people. Now, sometimes this can be confusing to other folks. There was, like, wait a minute, you were an atheist last week, now you're Christian. What's next? Zoroastrianism? And again, a lot of it is people having to reassure their friends, I'm the same guy. I've just got this other thing that gives me great meaning. For that matter, there was one person whose account I read who said, I became a Christian, and I was very sincere, as a convert is, but the people who have been Christians all their lives were kind of suspicious. Wait a minute, you were just an atheist, now you think you're one of us? And it's not easy for anybody when somebody they know goes through a profound change like this. But if atheists, I'm not going to condemn an atheist who turns to religion any more than I would condemn a religious person who turns to atheism. It's your own life. Do what makes you happy.
It's just so funny. Just the more we talk, the more I have this vision in my head. It's like, here's all of these religions that we've always they're all kind of on the same par. Because if somebody were to switch from, I don't know, Christianity to Buddhism, I mean, okay, fine, sure, whatever, go ahead. And atheism has always just been sitting off in a corner on its own. And
Yeah.
really what I'm
Oh
getting
yeah.
from our conversation is just that they're just all there together, all of them.
Hmm.
Unbelief, belief, all forms of belief, it's all essentially the same in terms of how we relate to it.
Well, it depends. I mean, I don't know if it's all the same because some people will say, "Look, I don't care what you believe as long as you believe in God of some kind." And then there are the atheists over at the side saying, "Excuse me." So some people do make that distinction. They
Hmm.
love everybody of all religions, but they're not so crazy about the atheists. And again, I sympathize with that because having grown up Jewish, there were people who said, "Look, as long as you believe in Christ, I don't care if you're Catholic, Protestant, what have you." And here I am, a Jew, on the side saying, "Excuse me, yo." But again, I guess one of the major messages of the book is since you don't have to have religion to be a good person, then people just kind of, if at all possible, relax, try to accept each other. If somebody becomes religious or becomes unreligious, if they're not hurting anybody, there's a great quote from Thomas Jefferson that I really wanted to put in the book, and I just didn't find a place for it. It matters not to me if my neighbor believes in 20 gods or in no God. It neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. And yeah, that's what a lot of my feeling in going into the book was like. That atheism is something that people can and should accept because whether somebody believes in God or not doesn't do you any harm, really.
Hmm. It is fascinating that you are from the belief system you are from, and you're doing research on atheism
Yeah.
and you're finding parallels between the two.
Oh yeah. In fact, I mean, there are a number of Jews who have become atheists,
Mm-hmm.
and there are, in fact, Jewish atheists who love Jewish culture and the food, even celebrate some of the holidays. They just don't happen to believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
There are Christian atheists who enjoy the fellowship of Christianity. They believe strongly in the moral teachings of Christ, but again, God is not part of it for them. But they live what they think of as lives that follow Christ's teachings.
Hmm. I did not know those existed.
Son of a gun, they do.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, they just see Christ as a person who was
Uh,
a philosopher of very good practices that they find, yeah, I, I agree, suffer the little children and treat people with loving kindness and be good to the poor. That's great stuff. I'm going to do that. Christ was right. Yeah,
it's all very moral, and so it just they
it
don't
is.
believe that he is the son of God.
No, no, they don't
Okay.
believe that there's God, so they don't believe he's God's son.
Okay. Well, that is news to me. Wow, that was very interesting. And then the ultimate question, and given the season that we are coming up on and the season that just passed, as an atheist, can you celebrate like Christmas and Easter and all of those holidays that are they're just pervasive?
Oh, I got a whole chapter on it. Yeah, that yes, people do. Uh, there is no law saying there are a couple of great quotes from the kids saying, "Hey, one kid said nobody can tell me what I'm supposed to do on December 25th, and if I want to have a tree and presents and even sing carols, why not? You don't have to." Um, and there are people. There was one girl named Hazel, raised Jewish, is atheist and she loves Christmas. All that she sincerely believes in generosity and peace on earth and goodwill to people. And she I quoted her in the book saying, "Look, I know that's cheesy, but I really do mean it." And there's even this one girl, Mia, who loves she loves Christian rock, and she will go to these concerts with her Christian friends, and they'll be rocking out and shouting words of praise, and she's having a fine old time. Let people do whatever they want, and so yes, without having religion part of it. There are at Thanksgiving when people will say a grace before meals, or anytime when there's a grace. There are secular graces. I quote one of them in the book. There are atheist holidays that some atheists follow and some don't. things like Darwin Day, celebrating Charles Darwin's birthday, or the winter solstice. If you don't want to have Christmas, the winter solstice comes around the same time. So, yeah, since there are no there is no atheist Bible, there is no atheist hope or what have you telling you what to do or not to do. You want to celebrate Christmas and still be an atheist? Have fun. I'm not sweeping up your pine needles, mind you. That's your business, but you know. But yeah, go have fun.
Okay, got it. That's great. The other thing is, for me, I'm just amazed that you wrote this book for teens. I think that's phenomenal. I think it's an incredible resource for them. And what is it that you hope that teens will get more than anything out of reading this book?
There are basically two things that I never say explicitly in the book, but it's kind of underlying everything. One is there is nothing wrong with you, at least not being an atheist. Maybe you're a jerk in other ways, but there's nothing wrong with being an unbeliever. And you are not alone. You may be in the minority, but there are millions and millions of other atheists and agnostic and unbelieving people, and other atheist, agnostic, unbelieving teenagers. I have a whole thing in the book on a little subsection on dating. You want to date somebody who also doesn't believe? They're out there.
Wow. Well, and you have, I know, because our editorial team talked about it, you have pages and pages of resources for kids who want to go find out more about atheist organizations or just atheism in general. And then your list of references is incredibly long. And just any kid, I'm just looking at it right now, it's about 50 pages of resources for kids, and it's one of the many things that you can get out of grabbing a copy of this, again, at www.beyondword.com/atheist, ATHEIST, getting the book 50% off. It's a wonderful resource, and I know some of it you did very consciously. And how did you find all this? Did you just do a Google search?
Some of it was Google. There are, and sometimes they'll have their blog roll of other blogs to look at, or you go onto forums and some people will suggest sites. There is a great website, Alexa, which rates websites by how popular they are. You can select by category. A lot of the time, I was going. Excuse me, my mind just went blank there. Going into various news searches, and certain organizations would come up, and it was just everywhere I possibly could. Primarily, yes, it was Google searches, but you should check out such and such. I sure did.
Awesome.
I mean, there's so much out there that really, a lot of the time, it was, what don't I include?
Yes. Yeah. Well, David, I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much for having the courage to write this book, number one, and the courage to write it for teens when you yourself are not a teen and you yourself are not an atheist, which is seeing the hole in the market and saying these kids need something. They need something that they can read, they can take home with them, that they can use to learn.
Well, thank you.
Yes. And then just again, I'll remind everybody, go to beyondword.com/atheist and grab your copy of the book, 50% off. And David, do you have anything else that you want to leave people with? Anything that I didn't ask a question about?
Yeah. A couple things. One, there is a website strictly for the book, which is whatifimanatheist.com. And let's see. And the other thing is simply that I tried to make the book as interesting and entertaining as possible. So along with the stuff about how to tell your parents and there's a whole section of the book on the various arguments you will get against atheism and against yourself being an atheist, and I provide various counter arguments just as so you'll be prepared. But I also tried to toss in as many other things. There are atheist jokes. There's an atheist playlist of 30 songs that are very, very popular among atheists. I mean, everything from performers, everybody from Ani DeFranco to Metallica, and lists of atheist celebrities. Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt represent.
Mm-hmm.
I know, I'm an old cornball. Sorry. So yeah, there's a lot in there.
Well, and I was fascinated to learn Daniel Radcliffe. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, but
Yeah.
learn Daniel Radcliffe is an atheist, and I don't know. It's like, I guess in my brain somehow, and possibly because I've grown up in the culture that I grew up in, I'm like, ooh, atheists. Those are the weird people, which is terrible, and it's so not true.
We're getting a lot of interference. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And it's just we're all people in the end.
Exactly. Exactly right.
Yeah, and the golden rule is it works for everybody. It's a great one. So,
Yeah, precisely.
well, David, thank you so much for being on the show with us. And just to reiterate the 2 points that you bring up, and I love that is theirs, that you are not alone. And I cannot remember the other one. What is the other one? You're not alone.
There is nothing wrong with you.
There's nothing wrong with you. Yes.
At least not about being an atheist. You may be a jerk in other ways, as I say, but there's nothing wrong with not believing in God.
Exactly. So, and it's a good thing for all of us to keep in mind. There's nothing wrong with us about a certain belief system, and that we're not alone. And there's always people out there and great resources out there that we can find that will help us in whatever we're dealing with. So thank you so much for being on the show, David.
Thank you. This has been so much fun.
Great. Well, in 2 weeks, we will be on again with Christine Arilo and Amy Ehlers. The two of them will be talking about reforming your inner mean girl. You might think, I don't have an inner mean girl, but guess what? We all have them. They're going to talk about them, and they're going to tell us how we figure out what they are, and they're going to help us start to reform them. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. Have a great couple of weeks.